Once again to another session of Courage in Crisis. This afternoon should be a very interesting one as we will be looking at the world of work. We're going to be looking at how work has transitioned or changed for most or many of us, and we're going to be looking at how we can deal with that, trying to understand some of the underlying reasons and trying to get our minds around this new paradigm. Joining me this afternoon, we have two of our panel. We have Reverend Algernon Lewis, Chairman of PEC of the Eastern West Indies Province, and we have psychiatrist out of Barbados, Dr. Brian McLachlan. I'm going to jump straight into the topic, guys. I'm going to ask you, what has work been like for you in the last few weeks? I guess to months now, we're going into months. What has work been like for you? Let's start with Reverend Lewis.
Janita, it's good to be back with you. I am still trying to sort out what work is like for me. When I say that I have not normally worked 8 to 4 as a pastor, of course, I've worked as I needed to. So that may be that I start at 4 and then I stop a little later, or that may be that work actually starts when everybody else goes to sleep, or that may be during the day when I find some time to, when I say find, there's a quiet space somewhere when nothing else is happening, I say, okay, let me try and get some stuff done now. So my work has always been very fluid. And I'm still trying to figure out, because you can't go to the office to do some things, everything has to be done at home. Everything has to be done like using your computer. And then right now my computer is down a little bit. So, that adds additional stresses. So, but it's happening, but it's not within any specified kind of time, 8 to 4 sort of thing.
Brother McLachlan?
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. Well, I work in a setting where I, do have to go into work sometimes, but I work with people that actually are working from home. And, you make some assumptions in terms of, meeting with people at work and discussing things, and now you are having to plan to make Zoom calls, telephone calls in order to get certain things done. The other thing is it's very clear that there's quite a lot of, anxiety, both in people that I work with and obviously the clients that we serve as well. And so much of your interactions, much of my interactions have been about, helping persons to manage their anxieties. You get calls about things that in the past you wouldn't get calls about because people are anxious. You have to remember yourself that sometimes you have some anxieties yourself. So you're often feeding on people as well as, in terms of, help. Let's have a discussion about things just to kind of relieve some of our anxieties and worries about what's happening.
Yeah, you both mentioned some interesting points there. The reality is that many of us are kind of, you're dealing with this at a personal level, but you're also dealing with this at a professional level. And there are some expectations that we have of ourselves, but we also have of our colleagues, our co-workers, our supervisors, the persons that we supervise. And that kind of starts to play a role in how we operate. What has been some of the expectations that persons have had of you, and what have been some of the expectations that you've had of others as you navigated this whole thing? Have they changed? Are they the same? How does that configure into how you operate? Brother Brian?
When in a normal work situation, everyone has a role, everyone has sometimes a defined role. And, you identify in terms of what your role is. But now that things have shifted, and they have shifted because, again, our focus is different, and how we do things has had to change as well. So we've had a bit of a, with that as a change, and everyone, I think, is getting used to the changes. Other structures and other committees and things of that nature have been created. And so you recognize that your work in some instances is now expanded. And so you sometimes have to delegate things, because you can't be in all places at all times. And so again, work is a routine as well. So you used to come into work at a certain time, but because you're not doing the same things, you often may not have to come in for that time. You can come in a bit later, and sometimes there are other things that you have to do that will keep you to a later time or different time than what you're accustomed to. So, everyone, I think, is sort of getting used to what is their accustomed activity, what things they used to do, and now how those have changed. And we're all, I think, trying to adapt to how everyone has changed. Mindful, as I said before, about, that we are all just trying to manage through this. And so you have to be accommodating sometimes as far as people wanting and needing to do different things and adjusting to get the things you want done.
Expectations, that's a big word, Janita. My expectations of myself is that I would be on top of everything and making sure that my focus is clear and all of that. But as the chairman of the province, that becomes very, very ticklish because the church is in a difficult space. We've not been this way before. We want to make sure that we are accurate in terms of not just doing work, but for me personally, hearing from God so that we can make the necessary steps that are needful. And of course, members of the congregation want to have directions, or pastors want to have directions, say, this is where we're going to go, this is what we're going to do. But we are in such a fluid space that we, by the time you think you're on some firm place, everything begins to move again, and you say, oh, that may work here, but that doesn't work there. And there are all these variables that you're trying to manage. And at some points, I've said, sometimes I feel like stressed just thinking about all the variables and the fact that you're trying to juggle, 6 things in one hand and making sure that none gets dropped and everything gets nicely balanced. But it's kind of funny to expect balance in a very fluid state of affairs. So whereas before there was one space, now in the COVID season is like it's all shifty and you're just trying to work in the moment. So in terms of expectations of myself is that I will just stay focused on what is important in the moment. I don't have the time to mourn what happened yesterday or last week because that is not going to come around again. It's just we keep moving in a new direction. Expectation of others. Some parts of that I have to entertain, some parts of it I can't necessarily entertain because of the fact that whereas some persons may have certain expectations and those expectations may seem completely reasonable to them, the reality is they may not necessarily be reasonable. And we may not be able to plot exactly what we're going to do from week to week. Some of that depends on the lockdown schedule. Some of that depends on what is happening on the ground. It's just so fluid. How many new COVID cases we have per week will determine what happens a week following. So we are in that kind of space of just playing it as it comes. When you're playing cricket, you play each ball on its merit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think about, especially, I guess all 3 of us are kind of in leadership positions in our own ways. And when you're in leadership, persons do expect you to have it all together and to know exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And thankfully, I have good support. And I'm hoping all of you do also have that type of support. But it's really difficult because there are expectations from outside of your organization or outside of you where you kind of will continue as normal. And that's sometimes people like not thinking so straight, and you have to remind them what happens with you, what the things that you are going through, we are going through too. Just because, all 3 of us are in helping professions, if you want to call it that way. Just because we in helping professions don't mean that we're not locked down at home as well, doesn't mean that we're not anxious as well. You might not be able to get 100% right now of productivity. You may not be able to get us to connect as much. You know, there's some things that we kind of have to manage people's expectations about, especially those persons that are working from home. And you think about, and we talked about this last week, dealing with family and children and relationships and having those conversations and letting them know, you know, I need time to work. I still got work if you are working. So that's a big deal. One of the things that you also kind of mentioned, both of you, is that idea of routine. And I don't think we can say that enough. I think every session now we've mentioned or said the word routine, because frankly, the routines are big in terms of the changes that have occurred, that disruption to our routine, the fact that it's not only our routine in terms of time, but in terms of our boundaries, in terms of work and home kind of doing this fluid thing where they amalgamate into one big lump and you can't really divide it sometimes. I know that as a pastor, Reverend Lewis, that's not common for you guys. That happens a lot. And a lot of people don't know that.
You would know.
Yeah, but it's worse now. I can imagine where it's like, when is work and when is not work, it's like 24/7. But it's a really interesting thing when we think about the boundaries and the expectations that people have and the general challenges that we have faced. For you, because we want to not only talk about some of the challenges for us, but for other people as well. There are a lot of persons out there who this change has been critical. So all three of us are still working. So we thankfully, even if our job has changed, our transition in some way, we're still working, but there's some persons out there who have become unemployed, whether it be a temporary arrangement that the organization has agreed to, or like they're just uncertain as to their potential employment in the future. There are a lot of persons, unlike us, who instead of being given greater responsibility or have greater things on our plates, they have less things. So they have little to do. And that's a problem for some people. Can we talk to the persons that might be unemployed and those persons that might be what we consider underemployed? Let's start with you, Reverend Lewis, and then we'll go to Brother Brian.
Janita, you mentioned not boundaries, but you mentioned routine. No matter what is happening in terms of there's nothing happening for the day or what have you, I think it's important to maintain a routine. So I still try to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be either earlier or by 6, so that that sense of normalcy remains. If I stay in the bed longer, it becomes more difficult to get up and to get motivated. And even if you're not working, I think just getting up gives a sense of purpose. Getting up enables you to say, okay, I'm now rising to meet the day. Because if you don't rise to meet the day, it feels like you just want to laze around and lag around. Even though the feeling may be there, you still have to fight that. So even for persons who do not have to go to work because they don't have work, I would say to them, try to maintain that routine. Get up early in the morning. And hopefully I'm talking to some people of faith. Get up early in the morning, even if it means get up to read your Bible and pray and knock around a little bit in the kitchen or whatever, and then go back to sleep. Get up. Get the day going, because it sets the pace, it sets a tone. So I try to do that, and I think it helps me. Even when I'm thinking, oh man, there's nothing, nothing I want to do at this moment, I still want to get up and get going. And other than that, I think that persons need to sort of embrace the space where they're at. If you keep longing for yesterday or longing for tomorrow, you may miss what is happening with you at this particular time. So recently, the government of Antigua and Barbuda decided that they were going to give people, persons who are interested, slips of what have you, okra or sweet potato or those cassava sticks and what have you. So they're saying, get into a backyard garden. Now you may say, I don't have a green thumb. Okay, may not have a green thumb, but try something. Or may not have the space, But there must be something. Pull some grass, cut something, wipe down your house, do something that is saying that I am keeping myself occupied. Because if you don't keep yourself occupied, then you begin to feel a sort of malaise that comes on, and that just goes in the wrong direction. So that's what I would say, at this particular point. Other thing I want to say for persons who are not working, remember your work and your identity should not be bound up together. So even you're not working, don't begin to think, well, I'm useless and I have nothing to do. You are a person outside of your work. So focus a little bit on that. And then, try to make those, maybe baby steps, but make those steps so that you are moving in some sort of direction. Because when you're not moving, it is so difficult to actually now get moving. Yes.
I think that's so true. Because I think some of us, some persons perhaps who've lost their jobs, may be in a bit of denial at the beginning. That may be true for those who, let's say, were sent on vacation. But really and truly, unfortunately, it's a prelude to them actually losing their jobs. And it's understandable, I think, that persons are going to have this whole woe is me sort of attitude, and perhaps we'll want to lie down in the bed for a few days. But as Rev is saying, there comes a point when you have to say, no, well, it's time that you get up, and it's time that I start to have a more positive attitude and more positive spin on things. We don't expect the situation is going to be forever and ever, and it may be that you do have to transition onto either occupation that you are in or were in, or you have to move into something new. So this is an opportunity, I think, for persons to sit down and think, okay, well, what are my skills? What can I do? Let's get the CV and refresh the CV. Let's make sure that I'm staying mentally sharp. So I'm going to be, doing reading. I'm going to be doing things so that, my job especially involved a lot of thought before that. I'm doing quite a bit of that now. I'm going to be, again, preparing healthy meals. I now have time to do that. So let's prepare as healthy meals as possible. I'm going to exercise. And some of the things that I was talking about in terms of, again, having activities that are designed to prepare you for when this gets better and you're in a position where you are going to be returning to work. But I think it is easy for persons to just sort of lament, and they look around. And if you are perhaps the only person that's bringing in income in your family, you will feel a stress that comes about because of that. And that may mean, again, this is an opportunity for you to reach out to maybe family members, have a discussion, an honest discussion about where things are, perhaps with your finances. We sometimes think, and I think that's true very much of men, that we have to solve all these things by ourselves. No, we can reach out and we can, again, get some inspiration from those around us, from spouses, from family members, and get everyone involved in charting a way forward, not just for yourselves, but for our families.
Awesome. I really liked both of those comments, because as you were speaking, I really don't want us to minimize the emotional and mental strain that some persons are under. We talk about the fact that as much as, we might not want to accept this, but most of us, when someone introduces themselves to someone else, the first thing they usually says, I am a insert occupation here. It's such a big part of who we are. So when that changes, it really can be impactful. Even if it changes a little, it can be impactful. And what Reverend Lewis said is correct. If you've never done it before, this is a good opportunity, like Brother McLaughlin was saying, to explore your own identity, explore who you are, and recognize that you are not just your job. You probably were doing that for the last 20 years, but you are not just your job. You're not just your work. You are more than that. And the reality is, a lot of us, that's how we define ourselves, and we don't feel purposeful when we're not working. We don't feel productive when we're not working. We don't feel like we can support our families, and we feel kind of like failures when we're not working. So we're not minimizing that at all. This is a big loss for a lot of people. A lot of people are grieving the change, that lack of connection with their colleagues. The reality is we spend more time at work, or waking time at work, than we do at home. So we grieve the loss of connecting with our colleagues. We grieve the loss of that routine of getting up, putting on the clothes, getting in the car, driving through the traffic. As much as we hate traffic, some of us will love traffic right now, if we were to be honest. That routine of leaving work and going to get lunch, and these routines kind of kept us going. And now we see like a lot of that's gone. You can, go and check out one of our routines at work was ordering lunch. We spent like half an hour deciding what we could eat, and that's just a big part of it, and as small and trivial as that is, that could be a big loss for some of us. So it's really important, as all of us have been saying, you're gonna kind of establish a routine. Routine is really, really important for everyone, for structural, just helping our minds to kind of consolidate everything. So there are a lot of losses, there are a lot of things, a lot of issues. One of the things we want to talk about before we move on, because we're going to move on to kind of some of the advantages of what we're going through right now. But a big part of this, and we are seeing it here, is that work has become very technologically based. There's that technological aspect to it, which could be a challenge, which could be a plus, it's a tool, so it could be either or. So let's talk about that, but also talk about the fact that time is much more flexible. And a lot of people are taking advantage of the flexibility of time, because they figure, I had this conversation with my brother yesterday. He said, people just expect that you're home and your bed laying down. So they're just asking you to do things left, right, and center because they assume you're doing nothing. And I told him, well, the paradox is, the more you seem like you are willing to do something, the more people think that you're willing to do something. Because, a lot of people have like absented themselves, I'm not leaving home. In our case, you only leave home for certain things. I can't do that because, I don't want to get myself in a position to, get ill or anything. So I'm not going to be part of that. I'm not going to jump in on that, So the people that are already jumping in find themselves being called on to jump in a lot, are just people just expect that you're home doing nothing. Like it's bank holiday here in Barbados. I don't know if people know that, but it's National Heroes Day. And I had a meeting to call, and it was really adamant, like I was not calling this meeting today. It's Heroes Day. Let people have their holiday, or however that looks like for them. So, let's talk about the technology and the flexible time that we kind of have. Let's start with you. I can't remember who started last time, but let's start with Brother Brian, and then we'll go to Reverend Lewis.
I think technology is a big issue, and it's a big issue for persons who are a little bit older. Prior to COVID, I had been on using Zoom maybe once or twice, if so much. Now, I'm on a Zoom meeting now, and I have one right after this. So I have been on more Zoom meetings than I care to think about. I had to help set up a Zoom account, and I will not tell you that was a humbling experience. I quite understand why people, I think, are a little bit anxious in terms of technology. And it puts us at a disadvantage with younger people who grown up with the technology and kind of look at you as if you're some sort of dinosaur because you can't, manage it. But this is an opportunity, if not more than an opportunity. One really has to now get with it, because this is where we are. And I think once, you're shown, it's usually about someone actually just showing you. Sometimes you can read manuals. It's about people showing you sometimes, and it's really not that difficult. But the initial resistance is the fear of, I'm going to look stupid, I'm going to feel stupid, because, here it is a 10-year-old that is going to be able to come in and do something on my computer or my phone, and I can't, and I don't understand how to do that. So, technology is important, because I think this is where we are now, and it's important to do it. As far as, flexibility comes back to what we talk about, boundaries, really and truly. You're working at home. Today, as you said, Janita, it's a bank holiday. I have been on more work calls today than anything else. Things that perhaps would have waited until tomorrow are getting done today. Why? Because actually tomorrow is going to be like today in a sense, which is many people are at home, so we've lost that work and that home sort of that balance. And it's boundaries, people are calling you. I always worry about the phone is going to ring because some friend is going to call or whatever, or you're working on a report or whatever, and someone is going to call, and you have to switch off work mode to then get into social mode. When you're at work, and somebody's calling you at work and it's not a work matter, then, sometimes it's an emergency or something like that. But if you're at home, then it can be anything. And for some of us who are, again, very rigid in how we think and do things, we like to be in work mode, home mode, or social mode. and one has to get used to that as well. So there's that flexibility. I mean, it's an opportunity now, because as you said, we don't have to be spending time in traffic getting to wherever. We have an opportunity now to, again, spend more time doing other things than work necessarily, because we're not, prepping to go to work or to get back from work. That whole, and you talked about just not having lunch or not being able to go out to lunch, which means you're, again, have more of an opportunity to even be at either your desk doing work or doing something else social. So we have an increase in time, but managing that is going to be important, because we do have to set some boundaries in terms of when we're going to work and when we're not going to. That's going to be different for everybody, I think, in terms of how they do that, but it is important to do.
Yeah, setting boundaries. That is very, very much so. I was talking to somebody who was working from home, and the person was saying to me, people are taking advantage of the fact that I'm working from home. So they call me at all hours because I'm working from home. And because of the fact that, most of the persons who are calling, you have developed a relationship with them over a period of time, and it's a service industry, then they answer and try to provide guidance. And so usually it's a reasonable call. But other than that, if it were a regular work period, they would have called at the office and she would have answered there. But then people are calling otherwise. We have to somehow still maintain some boundaries, because remember, in the case of the friend I referred to, she has a child at home that she has to pay attention to in school, technically making sure he gets his school work done and so on and so forth. And we have a lot of parents who are like that, who are trying to balance their 8 to 4 job of whatever their job, and then their parenting job, trying to balance those two. Sometimes they have assistants, sometimes they don't. And sometimes, in most cases, children tend to gravitate to one parent more than the other one. And so persons are feeling more crushed. So I am parent from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. And I'm still an employee from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. And so you have all of that. And I think at some stage, you have to build into that system and say, okay, there is a day, you probably have to say to your employer that there's a day that I'm not going to work. No Saturdays, no Sundays. That's a completely different system. And I definitely am cutting off. Some people may just have to cut off up to a certain time. Because the reality is, it seems as if that some persons get, well, it depends. Some persons get less done because you have more distractions when you're at home. And if your children at home are older, then you can afford to just tell them, you take care of yourself and you can shut yourself away. If one of those kind of persons that don't need people to call you for work, you can be up from 4 o'clock and say, I'm working until 4, from 4 to 12. And those are my hours that I'm going to work and get a lot done. And even if you don't get something done, you can extend it to 2 and still say, okay, I'm done my work now. So it's a lot that's going on that people are trying to crush into these small periods. What I also just want to say, person, just hang in there. Again, if you take a deep breath and pull back a little and say, now, how can we manage this? If we see everything coming at us and trying to beat up with everything that's coming at us, we'll always feel defeated. You take a long breath, pause. How are we going to work this out? Then some of those persons will find that they can structure themselves. They may not need anyone to structure them. Say, okay, I know I'm going to do this. Then because I know what is happening, I'm going to get up early and work from 4 to 9. Nobody call me. Nobody do this. No, because some persons, their work is online. Everything is there. They don't necessarily need anybody to call them and so on. And other persons have to say, okay, well, between 8 and 12, people are going to be calling me. I'm going to be answering the work phone, because there's some persons who have redirected calls to their phone. Their work phone is at home. And I'm going to be answering calls between 8 and 12. Please, child at home, you wait until afterwards. Those important boundaries, And just be able to understand that in this time and season, somebody may call you and hear your child calling you. Don't sweat it. Don't bend out of shape. You're on a Zoom call and your child comes across. So, all right, it's not at work. It's not like you're being unprofessional. It's just the nature of the season in which we're operating. That we're operating when things are bleeding into one another. And as such, appreciate that that is the reality. And it's not that you are losing control, but that we're in a difficult space and we just need to embrace it and say, laugh about it, and then walk on by.
Awesome. I think we've kind of really, and I just going to repeat them to kind of re-emphasize some of the stuff that we said. We talked about maintaining a routine, getting some type of structure is really important. Research is showing us that for this season that we're in, it's really important that you have a different weekday to weekend, because what's happening is that time either feels like it's really slow or time really feels like it's really fast. So what helps with that is having points of time to help you realize now is afternoon, now is evening, now is weekend, now is Sunday. That's something that's really important for us to help us to kind of deal with time. So the routine helps with that as well. Getting some sort of routine. Find one that works for you. So what might work for me or work for someone else might not work for you. Find one that works for you. My routine is very flexible, but there are certain things that I try to do every day around the same time. It might not work out, but you make the effort. The other thing that we mentioned just now is that communication. I think that's critical. Communicating with your family, letting them know what to expect, what to expect from you, when now is, mommy has a meeting, daddy has a meeting on Zoom, so we're going to need you to go and, deal with yourself, or you set up some structure for the children where they're talking to someone, the grandparent, or auntie, or godparent, someone, while you're in that meeting, talking to your colleagues, like, as you said, like, I'm cutting off work at 4, so I prefer if you do not call me after 4, like send me an email, I'll check it in the morning, kind of thing. Setting, demarcating those boundaries, having that communication clear, letting people know what to expect and get people's agreement on it, because people really forget, to be frank. So you gotta be real strict. But another thing, 2 more things also we talked about in terms of our tips is that idea of reimagining what productive looks like. I think Robert Lewis hit the nail on the head. It's not going to be perfect. Like, things might go wrong. Like, it might take you 10 minutes to get on the Zoom meeting and you might go on late, and, somebody might run cross or the child vomit right next to you while the meeting. A lot can happen. And you kind of have to redefine what you see as productivity, and what you see as being successful, what you see as having a good day. A good day right now will look a little different. Not only that, but being productive right now might mean you doing other things. I think Brian mentioned this before. Trying a new course, re-examining your career goals, looking at new things you can do and learn. I know a lot of people are trying new skills and doing new things, and just trying to, like, really explore who they are and what makes them feel productive and meaningful and purposeful. But I think capping off everything that we've said so far is that idea of our faith and our relationship with God. And that's kind of where we want to end. I want to get both of our panelists input on that. The reality that work is not just work for many of us. Work is a calling. Work is a purposeful thing for some of us, or some of us don't even incorporate God into our work. So what would that look like? That's one. And the second thing I want you to just comment on is, what is one thing that you're going to try to do? Today is Tuesday, but starting this week or going into next week, one thing that you're going to incorporate more into your own life that may help you with your own career. Let's start with Brother Brian and then Brother.
Right. I think this whole season, this whole issue of COVID has perhaps reminded us as to what is important. We're all running around, before trying to get things done. We're saying this is our work, this is important, this is what we have to do. And then we now have a much bigger priority. And I'm amazed at things that were urgent and must have to be done before things that you're not hearing anything about now. So again, it's a reminder certainly that one's work is important, but we have to remember that we are human beings first. We have families, we have loved ones. And again, with the anxiety that's come about with all of this, I think this is where faith, and this is where I think faith is most important in remembering certainly that this too shall pass. And if we believe, we will get through this. I do think that those who are just worried and who run around thinking that the sky is falling, but we just have to remember to breathe, and we have to remember to pray, and not always in that order either. You pray and then you can breathe. So I just want to say, where that is concerned, that again, don't worry about work. As Sister Janita is saying, things will happen. There has to be an understanding with one as employers that we're not working in a perfect situation. For me, in terms of moving forward, again, it's establishing those routines. That's what I know I need to do, and that's what sometimes I've avoided doing, really and truly. And sometimes you have to ask yourself why you're avoiding sometimes doing certain things. And again, it's re-examining, why it is that something that I think, or I'm telling people and telling myself is important, I'm not necessarily spending the time doing it. And I think, this is an opportunity to establish routines, but also understanding and determining what's important to you, because we're now in a different season, and we have to, I think, learn how this is going to be, affecting us and what this means for us moving forward.
Yeah. Well, for me, remember 1 Corinthians 10, I think 31, that says, whatever you do in word or deed, do it all to the glory of God. Work is sacred, right? Let's not divide work from our worship. In fact, the word liturgy is it's from two words, and one is work and one is people, which means work of the people. And work is something that we do to give glory and honor to God, using our hands, using our faculties. If you, Brian, you're a psychiatrist, Janita, you're a counselor. When you go to do what you do, all of that brings glory to God. When you're a parent, you're bringing glory to God. When you go to cook, you're doing glory to God. You're using those skills because God gave you all of those skills so that you can use for the glory, for God's glory, and to build other people up. So let's see whatever we're doing as giving glory to God. So work is very important. And whether that is going to be you're starting your garden or you are writing essays and so forth is very, very important. I really want to encourage the students to be focused at this particular time. Don't study in your bed. You need to study sitting up. It's a lot better. Anyhow, moving on from that, I think at least you feel like you are in class rather than being in class in your bed. I did, for the first time since this shutdown, a little bit of physical exercise today. I am hoping and praying I can keep that up. Yes, I'm hoping, because there was a time when I used to go to the gym often and all of that, but I really want to get back that part, because I think that, not being physical, not being running around the place, you get into that sedentary lifestyle, it becomes unhealthy. So really taking care of myself better, I suppose, is something that I'd want to do and be more focused. I'm also studying so that I have a lot of stuff taking my time right now. Yeah. But God is learning with us in this process very much.
Yeah, I think I said this last week, but I think this is really about us starting to use some muscles that we haven't used, that kind of probably were in atrophy for a long time, and stretching us a bit and getting us to think outside the box. It really is a challenge, and challenges are often good if we embrace them, if we build resilience and we are able to recognize, I'm going to maintain my faith, I'm going to maintain hope, and I'm going to try to make the best of this situation. So, yeah, I think this is a challenge for all of us, but a challenge that we will face with courage, with faith.
Yes. Courage.
I think that's right, courage in the crisis. So I thank us all for participating in this conversation. I thank you for viewing this conversation. Please note that we on the Calvary Moravian Church YouTube and Facebook pages. There are the past sessions. They would have been on a variety of things, from anxiety and fear and grief to dealing with relationships. We had 2 sessions on that, children and parents, and looking forward to on Thursday, we're going to have a special session for the older adult and the elderly. So those of us who have those persons in our lives, or we can get persons of that category to tune in, those persons who are just retired up to, 150. I don't think anybody 150 though, but up to whatever age, we really want to speak to those persons, and those persons who are caregivers of elderly persons. We want to address some of the peculiar and unique issues and challenges that they may have. So that's on Thursday. Look out for our previous sessions on the platforms, and we thank you so much for joining us. We pray that you will continue to have an awesome and productive week in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. God bless you.